Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is
this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson, and I'm going to tell you, I am in a really good mood, and I'm scared because normally when one of us, particularly between Cameron and I, are in a good mood, somebody, like one of the other one, tries to get under the other one's skin. So let's see if Cameron returns the favor, trying to get under my skin a bit, because I do it to him all the time. So we'll just see what happens on today's show. Buckle up, folks, because I know what he's going to talk about later about, oh yeah, you said the Argos weren't going to win and then they won. Yeah, that's coming later on in the program. So stay tuned for that. It'll be fun. But I'll tell you what is coming up on the program, guaranteed. That is the fact that we are going to speak with Josh Vander Vies, who was one of the co-chef de missions. I got to sit down with him not that long ago and do this interview. He was the co-chef de mission of the Paris Paralympic Games. That was a fun conversation. And then we're going to talk about the Grey Cup between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and your champion, Toronto Argonauts. I am joined by Claire and Cameron. Here comes your headlines.
Neutral Zone headlines.
Episode 8 of Breaking Down Barriers airs tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on TSN 4 and TSN 5, and women's para hockey worldwide is the focus. So tune in tonight to see how women's para hockey is growing all over the world. In other news, Ontario Para Network is holding their annual general meeting this Wednesday, November 20th. If you would like more information and to attend the meeting, please reach out to Doug at onpara.ca.
Whew, I got really scared. I thought I was not working with the right script when Claire threw a headline in there. Well done, Claire. Thank you.
Hey, I had to add that headline.
Yeah.
It's you got to tune in. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree. But I had a moment of did I send a totally different script? Because yeah, that was fun. But my headline is the Professional Women's Hockey League and its players will be playable in the video game NHL 25 beginning on December the 5th. Now, this is interesting to me because I'm not too sure exactly how this is going to work, because to the best of my understanding, the game has already been released. So if you have the game already, it must be like an update that they're going to do, which I think is really cool. And this is really good for the Professional Women's Hockey League to see this. And again, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but I will continue to talk about it. The growth of women's sports is always good and always respected. So to see video games getting on board, I am totally enthralled by that.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has won the Silver Slugger Award. This is Vladdy's second career Silver Slugger Award after hitting 30 home runs this past season with 130 RBIs and a .323 batting average and a .544 slugging percentage. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this offseason. Are they going to be able to sign Vladdy, or are they going to end up going into next year with no contract? And possibly he might get traded at the deadline if they're not able to sign him, is what I'm thinking. So once again, it's going to be an interesting offseason in Jays land.
Still have not yet talked about all the moves that the Jays have done with managers and bringing back GMs. It'll be fun. We'll talk about it eventually down the line for sure. Those are your headlines for this week. If you want to get a hold of us on social, here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball!
We're set to get this ball game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR.
Steve!
Nice pitch and a strike. Hey, gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play. Out! And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. And the Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.
I am so very excited to be joined by a friend, a teammate, a colleague, all of those things. And I have to say that I was thrilled when this individual got the role of co-chef de mission, and I'm talking about Josh Vander Vies, and he joins us now from British Columbia. Josh, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Brock. I'm so excited to still get to share the excitement of Paris 2024, even after the games.
It always lives on for a bit longer. Let's start, Josh. There was two of you doing the duties of chef de mission, yourself and Karolina Wisniewska. How did you guys divide up the duties of who does what?
Well, we do that with a lot of collaboration and teamwork. And the hint is sort of in the name of our role, co-chef de mission, co-chef de mission. It really is a mission to be delivering a multi-sport games. So it's long days, long hours, and a huge team of Canadian Paralympic Committee staff members all working together with sophistication and excellence. So it's early mornings, late nights, constant analysis of how all the athletes are doing and the results of that day, what that means for the next day, what that means for where every individual member of the team has to be and has to be headed and has to be ready to head towards. So it's a full team effort, a very fun one, a very intense one. Karolina Wisniewska and I mean, we just had to listen to and rely on our very skilled colleagues at CPC who told us to be at the right dignitary event or the right sport event or the right interview. And we just grinded through our days and contributed to the team's messaging.
We've talked a little bit about this on the program before. Canada received a historic amount of medals of 27. What do you attribute the success to overall for Canada?
Well, this is the age-old question that everyone in the sports system likes to have an opinion on what contributes to a good games, because we like to have good games, and it's very exciting that we had the most medals at the Paralympics for the past several games, summer games. It's interestingly enough, and because I was right at the forefront of it, was a shift in the way that both the Olympic and Paralympic teams in Canada were talking about performance targets. We very deliberately weren't setting medal targets. We specifically weren't talking in the media about the results that we wanted to achieve. And it's a bit of a paradox because pressure can help performance, of course, and it can also hurt it. Elite athletes who've qualified to the games are already under so much self and external pressure that I think it was pretty interesting to not set the targets, and then that's what allowed for them to unexpectedly be achieved. I mean, the other good contributor to it, Brock, was that para-athletics and para-swimming and para-cycling, the multi-medal events, they all had really good showings. And so that's a combination of good governance and excellence at those NSOs for a number of years leading into the games. Gets me thinking about centralization. I was very interested to see that the medals came from a variety of athletes who live and train across the country, and so it's not about coming together and being in one central location. It's embracing the power of decentralization in the system. Time will tell what other observers say or what the real analyses yield.
Yeah, I kind of really like the idea that you guys didn't set a target and you intentionally told me that it was on purpose. I think that when you set a number and you say this is what we'd like to achieve, you automatically put pressure on the teams, the athletes, even intentionally or not. And I think that this was a good move, and the result spoke for itself with the 27 historic medal number. So congratulations to you and everybody involved in that as well. Josh, there is a whole bunch of stuff that goes on during the Paralympic Games, and you have to be a lot of places at a lot of different times, and you have to support as many of your athletes as you can. Was there a moment that stuck out to you that you were like, oh, thank goodness I made it for whichever event or whichever moment? Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Well, there were a lot of nick of time moments where we really just made it, like a minute or 30 seconds before the race or event started, and then we saw great gold medals. That was Nick Bennett's first silver at La Défense in the pool. The moments that stick in my mind, though, I mean, one is when Aurélie Rivard won her 400-meter gold, also at La Défense. Incredible. And then I was there to watch her get the medal, be on the podium, and I yelled at her as she was walking by, veux-tu le drapeau? Do you want the flag? Because we had a big Canada flag, and she did, and we threw it down to her, and then she had that flag as she was walking and doing interviews, and that's in the iconic photo of her. That's the flag I threw down. Really cool. Another flag moment, the flag moments are so special, was at the women's sitting volleyball bronze medal match where they took bronze from Brazil in such a heroic game. It was so difficult. They won in 3 straight sets, but they really could have lost that at any time. Brazil was so strong and it was so hard fought. And we threw another flag down to them as well. But those are medal moments, incredible victories. The drama and the defeats are sticking with me too, Brock. I was at the USA Canada wheelchair rugby game, the very first game of the tournament, where Canada just couldn't pull off the win. They were so close to their American rivals, but they just couldn't do it. They were battling so hard, and then they kept battling for the whole tournament, but could only get to sixth. Or I saw some of the women's goalball games, and they weren't able to advance as far as they had wanted to either, even though they had such a historic win in Santiago against USA, making it so that Canada qualified, and USA didn't, to Paris, but then they couldn't pull off a medal in Paris. Of course, the crash of Stefan Daniel when he was leading in paratriathlon, gold medal favorite and leading, and he crashed. So these dramatic losses, I think, are such an important part of sport and sport culture in our country. We'll celebrate the medalists, of course. They are incredible. I'm also remembering the defeats.
I think that's all a part of the experience. It's the success, it's the defeats, it's all about it. And one of the moments that sticks out in my mind, at least for you, is that you were welcomed back into your old stomping grounds of the bocce venue, and you got to open up one of the sessions. What was that like for you, going back to a Paralympic venue, which that you were familiar with and a medalist? Tell me about that.
Well, I'd seen the trois coups, they're called, the three strikes, where there's that stick and you're hitting the ground 3 times at the beginning of the events at Paris 2024. I had seen those at the Olympics, and I didn't realize that it was celebrities from the sport that they were inviting to do that. And so out of the blue, I got invited by the International Federation in Paris 2024 to come and open one of the bocce sessions. So that was a real highlight, Brock. It really was. And it was also a BC4 round that I got to open. And so I went in there and I did the trois coups in my Lululemon gear and just loved it. Crowd cheered. And then I got to wait there as all the athletes paraded out in the, behind the scenes in that tunnel into the venue that I had gone through many times in my career. So I saw all the emotions on all those athletes' faces and soaked that up, along with just, it was so special to do something that Jackie Chan did for para taekwondo, and that other celebrities were doing across Paris. What a neat cultural highlight. And it comes from the French theater tradition, apparently, which is to hit the ground 3 times with that stick to get the audience's attention. I just loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was very cool, the tradition, and I thought that it was a good touch that you got to go back and do that at the bocce venue. And I'm so glad you called it bocce, because I've been told many times we've switched it to bocce, and I'm like, no, it's still
I'm not
bocce.
on board with pronouncing it with a British accent in our Canadian accent. And
I appreciate it.
And neither is our old pal from Ontario, bocce culture, Lance Kreiderman, which I had fun pronouncing the name of our sport properly with in Paris.
Yeah, I have done some recordings for Bocce Canada over the course of the last little while, and I've been told to please correct it to Bocce, so I've done it reluctantly, but I still stick to the Bocce.
And it's the more interesting one is in French, actually. I learned in Paris, so bocce. In French, I have no problem saying bocce. That's how it is in French. And it was added to the French language officially by the Académie Française for the games, which is so outstanding to have our sport in the French language now. But the controversy rages because in Canada and Quebec over all the years, we've always said le bocce, masculine, but l'Académie Française decided that it would be feminine, and la bocce is what they're saying in France now.
Is with all of this done now and over, was there something specific that you went into and you thought, I'm really nervous to do this particular thing in the role of chef? And were you able to overcome that fear and say, man, I was able to be successful at this particular thing that I was nervous about?
Well, I was nervous about accessibility in Paris. It's very challenging with the cobblestone and the old buildings and the lack of accessible metro. Luckily, I had access to our amazing transportation vehicles as a part of our team, so that really helped. But I was also able to bring my wife and old sport assistant, Dahlia. She was an incredible part of my sport career as my sport assistant, supporting me in winning bronze in London 2012, and to have her there again in Paris, helping and pushing and supporting me was so good. And so the nervousness on accessibility is always there, but to be surrounded by a team that believes in me, and to just have the empowering support of an assistant in a role like that was so powerful.
Yeah. And if memory serves me correctly, you and Dahlia began your relationship around a Paralympic Games, so that's pretty cool. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm on the right page there. Yeah. So that's cool to come full circle with that as well. I think a lot of people look at the Paralympic Games as like a window of like you're doing things between the beginning of the games, the middle of the games, the end of the games. And then we all kind of in society go, okay, September 8th, the games are over now. But I have a sneaking suspicion that you guys as chefs are not done completely just at the end of the games. Can you talk about some of the stuff that's gone on between the end of the games and as we're sitting here, and how your role wraps up?
Sport has given me so much over the years, and one of the main things that it gave me is a chance to live my values, Brock. And so that's one of the most powerful things that any of us can do, is to live our values. We can think about what values are most important to us. Some values really important to me are knowledge and competition. And I really got to live those values as co-chef. I went in with the message to the team and the media and sponsors of disability pride, sport pride, and Canadian pride. And I won't be stopping with that message anytime soon. That's the power of sport. It allows us all to live our values. And so any of us out there who love sport, who are involved in the disability community, it's such a great opportunity to live our values. I'll keep doing it. And the games are definitely a pinnacle for sport in Canada and our sport culture, but it's the time in between the games where we get to seize all the opportunities that are out there to be involved in sport and to improve sport and to celebrate it. But it's also when we can go out and create more and more opportunities together.
Well, Josh, congratulations on truly successful games, and I'm glad we could have this conversation today. Just because the games are over doesn't mean that the spirit of the games doesn't live on. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview with us. We greatly appreciate it.
The Neutral Zone is sponsored by the Ontario Para Network. Their focus on the growth and development of wheelchair basketball, tennis, and rugby in Ontario.
I told you off the top of the show, like I was really, really excited coming in to do this week's show, and I often am really excited to do this week's show. But today in particular, I did a conversation with a student from one of the universities in Toronto, and who is involved in journalism, and I was connected to him through Accessible Media Inc., where this podcast used to be housed, and I still do some work for AMI as well. And I did this interview, and this person is like my new favorite person. Why? Because he wants to dig deeper into para sports as a journalist, and I was amazed. And guys, just as a general sort of conversation point, and this is not planned, so who knows where this is going to go, but just as a general conversation point, it's people like this who get involved in journalism who find that sort of one diamond and they go, that looks good and shiny. And then they dig more and they find out more information and they can't stop. So once you get involved, it's like, I'm going down this rabbit hole, that rabbit hole, and I can't stop myself. But this is what we need in this new generation of journalists, because they need to get involved in understanding parasports in order for the movement of the Canadian Paralympic Committee and the Paralympic movement in general to move forward. Cameron.
Yeah, it's you need the media involved in order to push something forward. And that's a lot of the times how it works. You get the media involved and they're able to put a narrative out there to get more people involved.
Yeah, we're seeing this refreshing push for parasports, and it's the true kind of vision of being an ally for parasports. Is we have these people in journalism that may not be part of the disabled community or the parasport world, but they notice this little golden nugget that barely gets touched and recognized, and they see it for what it is, and they see the potential and the stories that are involved, and that's why we do what we do, right? We're on this show because we love the stories that sports bring us, and that next generation sees the value in parasport as well. And I want to add my headline. I did say that the Breaking Down Barriers episode was airing tonight. We do record on Mondays, so that is my mistake. It is airing Monday evening, but when the episode airs, it will be Tuesday. So hopefully we can go back on TSN and watch it later on. But if you're able to catch it, it's another piece of important content that the mainstream media is seeing its value in, and so it's finally sharing the story on a mainstream media outlet of the growth of women's para hockey.
Yeah, and it's so great to see that and just moving forward, and we talked about it last week about the growth of the women's game, and I think for TSN to get on board, it's just really good. And I just want to piggyback on what you say about the fact that you made a little bit of a blunder about saying tonight. It's the worst kept secret that we record on Monday evenings. We try and say, in a past game or this past week, we try really hard, but it's just one of those things that sometimes we come out with yesterday or the day before. Just understand that we're recording likely around 5 o'clock on a Monday. And so if you hear that, just know what we're talking about. But we do try pretty hard to keep it rolling, but it is hard sometimes to figure out what day of the week it is when you're recording a podcast. So tune into that and you'll be able to get it on the app, I would imagine, the TSN app, Claire, too. Like, that's pretty easy to go back.
Yeah, I would make that assumption as well.
If you want to watch it. So yeah. And if you've got Rogers Ignite, it's pretty easy to call those things up too. So it's all over the place. It's everywhere. I want to talk before I let Cameron tell me about, you didn't pick the Argonauts to win and they won. Before I let him do that, I want to bring this up because when I wrote Cameron's headline, it got me thinking of this next question I'm going to pose. And we talked about the fact that Vladdy wins another Silver Slugger, and it's, this is good for him, and it's good for the organization to say we had athletes who had a good season. But my question here is, how much does it or doesn't it matter that he won this award on such a disappointing and down season? Like, do you look at this and say, this is good, bad, or do you just kind of go, yeah, the season didn't matter, they didn't make the playoffs, I don't really care? Claire, where do you land on this?
I mean, yes, it was a disappointing season, but I don't think there's ever a year that goes by that you can say that it doesn't matter. I think there was a lot of positives to come out of that season, and Vladdy is one of them. They really have to see the value that they have in him, especially at this crucial time within contract talks and another season coming up. It's you have to decide whether you're going to commit to him long term and truly build a team around him, and what other pieces do you need? It feels like the Blue Jays have had the team to be able to kind of make a run in the playoffs, but there's, whether it's injuries or streaks that are lasting way too long in the losing column. It's, I don't know. They kind of have to figure it out. And Vladdy's one of those players that's showing them that win or lose, he's doing what they need him to do.
Yeah, with you can look at it from different perspectives. From the fans' perspective, some of them might care, some of them might not care because it was a bad season. Somebody usually has to play well, even in a bad season. Like, someone has to be your best player, even if you have a losing record or don't make the playoffs. From Vladdy's perspective, this is his last year coming up, and then he's going to be a UFA. So he needed to have a big year this year to have the upper hand in contract talks. So I think it's great that Vladdy had a great year for him personally, because he needs that kind of stuff in order to be able to negotiate a higher contract for himself. From the Jays' perspective, I think it's great that he had a good year as well, because if you're going to sign him, Rogers has oodles and oodles of money, so I don't really think they care what they give him. If they want him to stay, they'll pay what he wants within reason. But even more so, if they're wanting to trade him, what better time than now than having a great year that he did to be able to get more back in a trade, if that's the way the Jays choose to go. So I look at it from those three different perspectives. As far as, if fans, do they really care? Yeah, I think they're more disappointed with the season, but I think for both the Jays and for Vladdy himself, yeah, I think they put a lot of onus on that.
I keep seeing that there's comments both from Vladdy and Bo Bichette that they want to win a championship in Toronto together. Now, with Vladdy having kind of the upper hand with his contract, do you think there's room, or do you think that conversations are happening within, I don't want to re-sign unless Bo is here as well?
Me personally, no. I don't think they're stuck at the hip together, because I don't know, my feeling from what I've read, and it's hard to know what's truth and what's fiction on social media, but from what I've been reading or seeing, I think Bo wants out. I don't think he wants to come back to the Jays. But Vladdy does seem to, by what he's saying. So I don't think they're exclusively tied together, but it also depends who they get in the offseason. I've been very vocal on Twitter the past week or so. Anytime somebody starts talking about Juan Soto, I'm like, the Jays aren't getting him. Don't use him as a piece for the Blue Jays to get their hopes up, because you're just trying to get him more money and you're using the Jays to do it. And but I have been wrong before, not about the Argos, but I have been wrong before about some other things. So if they get Juan Soto, do they have to give up a Bo Bichette or trade him because they won't want to pay him the money, if it's going to end up being $250, $300 million for, say, both Vladdy and Bo Bichette? That's another $600 million. And if you're giving Soto $600 million, I don't know if the Rogers can afford that. So it all depends on how the offseason plays out, I think, as to whether or not they'll keep both or maybe just keep one. And my money's on Vladdy staying.
Yeah, to answer Claire's your question, no, I don't think they're tied together. I think that they're gonna understand that their relationship is what it is, and it's they're gonna be sad for each other when one goes and the other one stays. If they both stay, which I'm not so sure that after this year they're both staying. I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel it to me either. I've read the same or similar things to what Cameron is reading, and I don't get the vibe that Bo wants to stay. And I also think that Bo thinks he's worth more than I personally think he is, and I think the league is going to look and go, buddy, you've been injured a lot, and you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. But he's only going to find that out by going and exploring the market and doing that. So we'll see. But no, I don't think they're tied together. I think they might be good friends, but as for them being tied together, no. If Rogers backs up the truck and says, "Hey, Vladdy, we're going to give you this much millions of dollars," and sorry, Bo's not going to be a part of that. Vladdy's not going to turn down that money because Bo's not going to be there, and that's just my thought. And I've proven to be wrong before, as Cameron's going to tell you in a couple of minutes. I was wrong, but. I don't think I'm going to be wrong about this particular one. I think you're going to see this year be the last year where you're going to see Bo and Vladdy together, and I would be happy to go on record. Oh, look at that. I am on record in saying that this is the last year.
About you being right about the Argos or about Bo Bichette?
Well, we all know about the Argos, but no, like the question you asked us, back at you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if Bo Bichette had a similar season to what Vladdy had, this would obviously be a different conversation because you'd want to keep both and maybe work out contracts that way. But he had a terrible season. He was injured. He went down to the minors, back up, and then back down. So he very much could be traded. And I personally haven't seen comments or anything, but if he's wanting out, then yeah, why not play the market? Maybe that's part of the deal to get Juan Soto.
The thing that stands out to me, and Cameron, you'll be able to answer whether you saw the same quote that I did. The thing that stood out to me around the trade deadline, he was asked by Hazel May, how do you feel if you get traded from Toronto? And his exact quote was, "I'm fine with that." If you're fine with that, or you're not fine with it, you're gonna say, "No, I want to be a Blue Jay for life, and I want to stay here." He said very, very clearly, "I'm fine with that." Did he try to walk it back a little bit later? Yeah, because I think he got some of the fans their pants in a knicker about it. But I do think what he said first and what somebody says off the first blush is often what they actually really truly feel on a situation. So yeah, I think he'll be here this year because he's under contract. I don't think they're going to trade him in the off season now, but we'll see. I think he's going to be here this year, but beyond that, not so much. All right, it's time. I was gonna make a joke and say it's the end of our program and we're not gonna get to the CFL. I was gonna do all that, but it's not. We're not even close to the end of our program. We still have just under a half an hour to do, and so let's talk about it. The Toronto Argonauts are champions for the second time in the last 3 years. They beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I had the score in front of me, and now it's
41-24.
41-24. Thank you. And they won. They really outplayed Winnipeg in all facets of the game. I think for me, what was the difference maker was Arbuckle did a few long passes, which you saw from Kelly earlier in the playoffs and earlier in the season. I didn't know that he could do as well as he did in that regard. He played well. The defense was great, and thus we have a champion. Something else I want to throw out there. This is now the 6th time that the Toronto Argonauts have played the Winnipeg Blue Bombers all time in the Grey Cup, and they have won all 6 of those games all through. So very, very cool stat. Not a cool stat if you're a Winnipeg Blue Bomber, This was the pivotal game for Winnipeg. They went to 5 straight Grey Cups. Up until this week's game, they were 2 wins, 2 losses. Now they are 2 wins, 3 losses. I will have some questions related to that in a few minutes. But Cameron, what say you on your beloved Argos winning the second championship in 3 years?
Well, Brock, let me tell you this about that. Why would you pick the Winnipeg Blue Bombers when they were 0-6 all time in the Grey Cup against the Toronto Argonauts? When they've been to the big game 5 years in a row, which is phenomenal, but they've only won twice. That's not even a dynasty, for God's sakes. So, yeah, I don't know why you bet against the Argos, but Nick Arbuckle, he was as good as he needed to be. I think that Dinwiddie needs to get a lot of credit for this win. He is a phenomenal coach. I think over the past 4 years, I think the stat I saw is that he's taken the Argos to first place in the division 3 of the 4 years that he's been in the league. He's now won his second Grey Cup in 4 years, and they're calling Dinwiddie the possible best coach that the Toronto Argonauts have ever had. So I think Dinwiddie, he kind of changed the playbook to go to Arbuckle's strengths, and that's a sign of a great coach too. Arbuckle, he was 26 completions for 252 yards, which, is average, I'd say, in the CFL. He had 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions as well. So you'd like to clean up those interceptions because I think that made the game a little bit closer at the beginning. But it was 10-9 after the first half. And then they ended up winning 41-24. So they scored, 32 points in the second half in order to kind of break out. And Claros, he didn't have a good game. He had 4 interceptions in that game, and one of them led to a pick 6. So, yeah, he just didn't have a good game. Winnipeg didn't really have a good game, and I think Arbuckle was really good as well at distributing the ball, passing it, because there was 9 different receivers that had at least 20 yards of receiving yards. So when you're spreading it around that much, I think that's great because then the defense doesn't know who it's going to, because a lot of the times you only have maybe 2 or 3 people tops that you would throw it to. And nobody had over 45 yards pass receiving either. So it shows you that he needed all 9 to kind of spread out the offense around, because, a lot of times you'll see somebody getting close to a 100-yard game and nobody did. So I think the defense came up big, which I thought they'd have to do. 4 interceptions. Go Argos.
Yeah, this was a great example of a complete team win. After losing your starting quarterback in the semifinal and coming into a Grey Cup. And yes, the first half, it was frustrating only seeing field goals happen. But hey, they were 3 for 3 from the field goal. And then the second half came and offense started, and a big time defense right at the very end there, that fourth quarter, having 2 picks and really turned the game around. It was very much needed. It was a close game, and without those turnovers, it was kind of in Winnipeg's hands at that point. Like you said, Cam, from coaching all the way from offense to defense to special teams, the entire team won that game. It wasn't just one guy.
I'll tell you this. I was watching the game on record because I had some family obligations, which I knew I had to get through before we recorded today's podcast, because there was no way I was going to get through an hour without knowing what the end result was going to be, especially with it being on the docket of our conversation. So I will publicly say I appreciate the Neutral Zone group staying completely silent for me so that I could watch it in time and be able to live on what was going on. And I was able to stay away from my phone and social media, which is really hard to do. But I was committed to doing it. I'll tell you this, and I wouldn't say that this was the turning point, but it was one of them. When the Winnipeg Blue Bombers had that blocked punt and they were going to get the ball, and then all of a sudden the referee throws a flag and he's like, oh, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, obstructed the guy from getting the ball. It's Toronto football. And I'm like, wow, that feels like a CFL rule written all over that one, but we'll take it. And it was that moment that I thought, okay, this is where this is going to turn. And what did they do? They went back and they scored points. I can't remember if they scored a touchdown or if it was a field goal at that point, but they definitely scored points off of that turnover. And then it just started flowing from there. And Cameron, you did ask me why I went against the Toronto Argonauts. It's because I didn't trust Arbuckle like you did. And last week I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, Cameron, you're such an Argonauts fan. Like of course you're gonna sit there and say Arbuckle, and you're gonna do this.
He sounds like a pirate, for God's sake, his last name. I love saying Arbuckle.
You're gonna do that, and I didn't buy what you were selling us for, a few minutes last week. Apparently, I should.
I mean,
and that's.
If you look at the stats, I had no idea that Toronto was 5 for 5 in coming into this Grey Cup. So for them to go 6 for 6 in the Grey Cup, like that's not just Cam being a big fan. That's proof right there. That's proof that if you take the Argonauts to the Grey Cup, you're probably not going to win that one.
Against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Like they were 5 for 5 against the same franchise.
But that's not even against Winnipeg. If you look at the stats of the Argos and last times that they've been in the Grey Cup, I think they have a winning streak of 6, 7, or 8 games. Like last time they lost in the Grey Cup, I think was in the 80s, maybe 88 or something like that. I forget what it is, but they haven't lost a Grey Cup game since, like I said, 80s, maybe the 90s.
When Matthew Shinetti was talking to Nick Arbuckle at a point, and then it switched over to James Duthie. This is a guy who was literally looking for coaching jobs. He was looking for coaching jobs at the beginning of this year because he was on the scrap heap and nobody wanted him. Then Toronto had the situation happen with Chad Kelly, which we're not going to muddy the waters in this. But then they had the situation where he's suspended for half the season and they go, hey, Nick Arbuckle, come play for us. And they did that. And they gave Cameron Dukes the shot for the first 3 or 4 games. He was above 500. Cool. It's all well and good. And then they said, hey, Nick Arbuckle, here's the Grey Cup. Go play because our quarterback has a fractured ankle. And and it was all we played for our brothers. We did it. We surrounded. And that is such a true thing. People can really galvanize around something. I don't care what it is. A team can galvanize around something if that's what they're going to do and that's what it's going to be, whether it's the Grey Cup record altogether, whether it's their quarterback went down, whether it's a combination of A, B, or C. People can galvanize around these things, and that's what the Argonauts did this year. They were massive underdogs on the money line going into this, and they said, we'll show you, CFL. Did you forget we won one of these 2 years ago against the same team? Oh yeah, you did, and we won again, and here we go. So teams can galvanize around something so simple, Claire, and I think that's what happened here.
Yeah, well, another stat that kind of blew me away hearing that is another kind of proof in the pudding is that Arbuckle has had his entire career has been being a backup quarterback all the way back from high school. That guy grinded. You can tell that he buys into the process. He knows his role on a team and he's ready whenever he's called on. And so he truly did that. He did his role and he bought into the process and he stepped up when he was asked to step up. And it's it's remarkable. That blew me away hearing that.
100%. And that's really interesting. Like you said, he's been backup, and he was the third string quarterback for the Argos at the beginning of this year after whatever game. Like, he came in 2 or 3 games in the year, and he was 30 days away from retiring. I heard him say in an interview.
Yeah,
he was about to hang him up. He was looking for coaching, like he was networking.
Yeah, his Canadian visa was about to expire, so he was making the decision of, all right, I guess I'm leaving Canada. I guess I'm done in the CFL, and here we are.
Time to coach. And yeah, it's just unbelievable. And now he's a Grey Cup champion. But not only that, he was the most outstanding player, like the MVP of the Grey Cup. So good for him. It's going to be really interesting to see if he gets a starting role next year, or if he's going to be a backup again. Because I'm fascinated to see that. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen.
Like, sign him now. Like, he deserves a chance. Give it. You literally thumbed your nose at him and you said, well, we're going to give Cameron Dukes the first, 4 or 5 games of the season. And, we had the PA announcer on early in the season, and, he was, I believe in Cameron Dukes. Cameron believed in Cameron Dukes because his name was Cameron. And that's
100%. That's good scientific way of thinking right there.
Yeah, fair. But like, give him a chance. Give him that. He earned it. And I think this would have been a different season had you given Arbuckle the chance from the beginning of the season. That this team could have contended for the top spot in the division. Does it matter now in the grand scheme of things? No, because they won the championships and Ryan's all excited and happy, and it's all well and good. But you could have had a bit of an easier road if you just decided, you know what, we're going to give this guy a chance. For me, it's sign him right now, because they did it with Chad Kelly the year that he won the Grey Cup. They gave it to him 2 years ago. They said, you're now our starting quarterback, and that's what they did. So for me, it's sign Nick Arbuckle, because he deserves it. He's got the snot kicked out of him for years about, oh, you're not a good enough quarterback. He's proven it now. Pay the guy what he deserves. Cameron, you said it a little bit, and I'm going to let you actually say it fully. But we can't call this a dynasty for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, even though they've made it to 5 Grey Cups, because now they have a losing record in the Grey Cup in those 5 years. This can't be a dynasty, right?
No. I think you have to win at least 3 championships to even consider it being a dynasty. And they've only won 2, and they've lost 3 now. So I think it's, a great accomplishment that they've been to the big game 5 years in a row. I really like Mike O'Shea as a coach. I think he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach. But there's something about it where they've only won the Grey Cup twice, and 3 times they weren't able to. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. I agree. You have to at least reach that third one in so many years as well. You have to keep the gap close as well. You can't go another 6 years without winning and then say we're a dynasty still. No, it has to be in that respective chunk of time. So no, I agree. They are not there yet.
If the Argos win one more year with this essential same group, and they had pieces change from this year too, and still went back, 2 out of the last 3 years and won, you could have conversation that they're a dynasty in that. But I think they have to get to another one, and because of that, I think you can't put Winnipeg in that same category. You just simply can't. I think their quarterback, whose name is currently escaping my mind, but the Winnipeg's quarterback is totally overrated. Totally overrated. He can get the team, to the top of the conference. He can get them to the Grey Cup, but he just can't get over the edge. Zach Collaros, it's finally come to my mind here, but I'm sorry. I just find that he's overrated. He's a great in-season quarterback Cameron. But he can't get over the edge in the Grey Cup. Just so you know, you're on mute at the moment, just before you go and
Thank
speak.
you. I was sneezing and coughing, and I didn't want the listeners to hear that. So thanks for reminding me that my mute button was still on. Zach Collaros, just based on the game that he just played, he was 15 for 30. So he only made half his passes. It was only 200 yards, and he had 4 interceptions. That's not going to do it. But, Winnipeg, they started off horrible this year. I think they were 0-4 or 0-5 to begin the season. And then they ended up winning like 8 games in a row or something like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I think they're done, but it's going to be interesting because Zach Collaros, he's 36 years old. He's no spring chicken, and they're going to need a quarterback eventually. Like, it's going to be interesting to see when Collaros retires. Or is it going to be one of these people like Damon Allen that go until he's like, what was he, 40 years old when he retired? So maybe he'll do that, but I don't see that happening. And this year, if you want a quarterback, I think this is the year because they got 2 great quarterbacks out in BC. I think they're going to have to get rid of one of those. You got a couple of good quarterbacks in Montreal too, and they're going to have to get rid of one of those too. So, but most of the other places, they don't have a lot of places to put these good quarterbacks. Calgary, you might think Winnipeg, maybe, depending on Collaros and when he retires. And Hamilton, I know they have Bo Levi Mitchell there, but he's no spring chicken either. So I think they're going to need a quarterback pretty soon too. So it's going to be interesting in the CFL offseason.
The Bo Levi Mitchell ad sort of felt to me like a CFL Tom Brady sort of feel. It was like, oh, we have the named quarterback and we're going to do this and we're going to. And then as I watched Hamilton bits and pieces this year, I'm like, this guy isn't what he claims he's going to be. Did he have his good years? Sure he did. I mean, he played outstanding for Calgary for a number of years, but just because you are who you are and your name is who it is, you still have to be surrounded by pieces. The Argos didn't have a whole bunch of named pieces. They just had a bunch of guys who said, we're going to put our work boots on, we're going to go, we're going to do it. And that's what they did this year. Cameron, I have to ask you, because we talked about him last week a little bit, is Ryan's okay? Is he, like, his blood pressure is back to normal, I guess? He must be really, really excited.
Oh, yeah. We were having a couple of bubbly pops last night watching the game, and after that first half, we were both, or even before the game, we were anxious, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And then after that first half, where it was like only 10-9, we were, I guess a bit positive, saying, okay, well, they're only down by 1 point. And then they got the famous Canadian Rouge to tie it up 10-10. Only in the CFL, you get a Rouge. So that was kind of cool too. But then in the second half, the Argos went off. So, yeah, we were all really excited and happy. And, it was good times.
Also, he's a Bills fan, too. So,
yeah,
like,
not as much as he was, but, yeah, he still is. And I kept my eye on that game, too. And that was a good game, handing the Chiefs the first loss of the season. And I kept my eye on the Pittsburgh game, Steelers, too. And they won by a couple of points. So
good day all around for the sporting world. If you're a
and
Bills
how did your
fan
Green Bay team do, Claire? Cheeseheads.
Green Bay won with a last-second field goal over the Chicago Bears. So
nice.
That was it was a rivalry matchup. So yeah. I was definitely watching that Bills game. I was so glad to see the Chiefs go down.
Man, they had 7 games this year so far, the Chiefs, where they only won by by a possession. Like, they had so many close games this year, and then finally they just lost this one. And Josh Allen, like, he's a great quarterback too. I still think Mahomes is better, but Josh Allen, he was phenomenal.
Every game this year, the Chiefs have been down, They, except for one, I think is what they said. They've been down every game except for one, and they've pulled it out every game. And like last week too, I can't remember who they were playing, but they won on a last second field goal a blocked field goal. They made happen. I mean, they've just had rabbits coming out of all different places for the Chiefs, and that rabbit didn't come out in the game on Sunday for the Chiefs. But hey, it's good to see. I love Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, once the Bills are out, I can't get mad at Andy Reid. I can't get mad at Patrick Mahomes. I can't get mad at Travis Kelce. He showed up in Toronto, by the way, for the Eras Tour. On the Friday night, he showed up. He apparently went to practice, and then he was at the show, and that was a good time. Welcome to the neutral zone, where you never know where Brock Richardson's head might go. All of a sudden, we turned into, oh yeah, Travis Kelce just showed up at the concert. Yeah, that's been a while.
Only a matter of time.
Swift.
They have to get verified tickets now. Why? Because people are stealing people's tickets. They're stealing them and then scanning them and going in like electronically. Like, the world is just a mess with Taylor Swift. Like, my goodness gracious, it's crazy. And
Twitter, I still call it Twitter. There were so many, I have tickets, message me, and and I'm sure they're all scams.
Listen, I will give Claire a public apology. I had a friend.
2 apologies,
quote
in
unquote
one broadcast.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But I had a friend who said, I have tickets, and I was talking to them, and it seemed fine and seemed all well and good. And I'm like, Claire, just post it on social media that if anyone has connections, hook me up. So I hooked her up, and it turned out to be a scam. So, Claire, I am incredibly sorry for that. But it's too bad that people have to go to such levels to scam
and you know
people
what?
over
A beautiful
Taylor Swift.
thing that we have is intuition, and we didn't lose any money. Everything's good. But yeah, you got that little inkling of I don't know if this is legit, but. Yes, just like everyone else, I was trying to get some last-minute tickets, and it just didn't work out.
By the way, if people are out there, and I know I'm hearing people say to me right now, stick to sports. We've only got 2 minutes. We're pretty much done for the day, okay? But if people want to see the concert, go watch the Eras Tour movie on Disney Plus.
I was about to say the exact same thing.
That is the full-fledged concert. That's it. You in the movies, it was like 2 hours and 47 minutes. Disney Plus, it's 3.5 hours. The only thing you're missing are those little intermissions where she changes into her 17th outfit in 3 hours. Well, you're still going to get the outfit, so you're fine. Just literally go watch it on Disney Plus. And Claire, I think you told me, you said, I'm not the one that wants to go to the concert. I was happy with the Disney Plus, or not Disney Plus, the movie, and I tend to agree with you. I'm going to watch it again with my niece in a couple of weeks, and I'm fine with that.
Watch it on a big screen.
Absolutely.
TV.
I mean, if I end up, if it did work out, great. Yes, that would have been awesome to see the concert, but you can't let it bother you too much either at the same time. So it's only a concert.
And at this point, I should also tell you, and I think it's fair to share with the audience, even though we've now spoke about Taylor Swift for the last couple of minutes, we have been
a giveaway for Taylor Swift tickets.
No, we don't. But I
was getting excited there. I was like, what's going on?
We have been renewed by 2025 by Ontario Para Network. So even though we spent the last 2 minutes talking about Taylor Swift, apparently that didn't deter Doug from keeping us on for another year. So we are happy to be a part of On Para, and who knows what we might talk about in future weeks, but you're going to get another full season with us, and we're going to do some broadcasts at the Wheelchair Basketball National Championships, which Doug chatted about a couple of weeks ago that was happening. So lots of good things coming up in 2025, but you'll see we're only going to do 3 episodes in the month of December because we all need a week off to enjoy Christmas. But we appreciate all of you out there, even if we do talk about Taylor Swift for a few minutes. I appreciate my co-hosts, Cameron, Claire, and Josh, who has returned and landed back in Ontario from visiting his wife. He will make a triumphant return next week, and we'll get to see him again. But thank you to you both for another wonderful episode, and that's the end of our program for this week. I'd like to thank Cam Jenkins, Claire Buchanan. I'd also like to thank our technical producer, who literally has to put all of our shenanigans in 1 hour of a podcast, and that's Mark Affollo. Thank you so much for all that you do as well. Tune in next week because you just never know what happens when you enter the neutral zone. Be safe, be well.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.